All right, guys, we got some new cool stuff to check out, and we are really excited to check this out. These are the Hot Team brass portal axles, and they do come out of China, so the shipping does take a while, but I think they're worth the wait, so let's check them out. They also, so I paid for these, and they sent out some extras. These are some Gladiator Nerf bars or frame rails, and then steering link kit. All right, so you can't really see it, so we're going to open this stuff up and lay it all out. Okay, here we have everything pulled out. We left the diff covers in here because we'll do those later. I don't want to mess with the screws. We've got our axles, both front and rear, in brass. We got our portal covers or portal cases. All of our gears, the rear axle shafts, the two front stubs shafts or C-cups. These are basically stock dog bones, and then the axle or the output shafts for the portals that go to your wheels. We also have our worm gear and our main drive gears. I believe these are stock, and I do believe that this is going to have a gear reduction of 25% is what was mentioned. We also have our bearings and our steering knuckles here. And these are also brass. So all of this is brass, and then these are hardened steel, and this is brass, and I believe this is also hardened steel. And then our bearings, of course, and then brass diff cover. So that's everything that comes with the Hot Team portal axles. And we're going to go ahead and put them together. We'll weigh it. I think it was around 70 grams of total weight. I think. We'll see once we get it all together. I think it might be more. I think, yeah, we'll see. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and put together the axles and the worm gear and whatnot. We've got our bearings. You go ahead and press your bearing in the front here, where your output shaft goes. Your worm gear just goes straight in there. There is a small little O-ring that's on this side. I guess this would be the front side of the axle or the worm gear. And then you're going to have two bearings on each side, and then your brass gear. Okay, like so. And you can grease those up if you'd like, especially if you're trying to waterproof them. Make sure you use waterproof, like marine grease. Don't put too much because you don't want it to bind up. And I guess we need these. Just what we need. More Allen wrenches. Look at this. Hold on. Look at this. What do you guys do with all your extra Allen wrenches? Like, I got a billion 0.05 Allen wrenches. And we obviously use better tools. I need to get some MIPs at some point, but I mean, really? Like, and we're just going to get more. What do you do with those? Maybe we make roll cages out of them and weld them? I don't know. Do some sort of metal work? Too much. All right, let's get back to this. Then you got a bearing that goes on this side, the diff cover. And they go together. Now when I'm putting the diff covers on, I don't like to tighten them all the way down. I like to, kind of like a wheel, where you'll tighten across and you slowly tighten them down. They're down, but they're not super tight, and you basically just don't want to have them bind or go in any weird way, because the O-ring does cause it to push up here. So you want to make sure that you're just kind of going down evenly. And you just kind of get them in there just enough. Mind you, we'll have to pull these screws back out when we put our rear truss in. We just want to get them in there so that we can feel if things are binding or not. So because of how these are designed, you don't have bearings. Well, you'll have bearings, but you're not going to have the screws that cover the bearings. So just be aware, these actually do stick out. And they will just fall out until you get the portal side installed. And if you have a hard time getting the axle shaft into the brass gear, you can always pull the diff cover off, or do it before you put the diff cover on, or you can move the worm gear back and forth a little bit and try to work them in. You kind of saw me do that, so should be good there. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead and install, well, these actually have to go together all at the same time, so we will drop this in. And there are no bearings in the portal housings. They just are up against the brass, essentially. Wrong side. You'll use the set of longer screws in the top. They go all the way through to the axle. And if you want, you can actually start the screw before you put it on the axle housing. You just don't want to go all the way because it is threaded. This portion is threaded. So you need to make sure the screw is just barely poking out. Okay, I lied. It's not actually threaded. I thought it was. It seemed threaded at first. It is not. It's just tight tolerances. And these will just screw right into your axle housing where those bearing screws normally sit. Again, I wouldn't tighten this all the way down until you get both sides in, just so that it's easier to make sure things aren't binding up. The screws aren't, the screw holes aren't offset a little bit, making it harder to push the screw through. Again, just kind of test things along the way, make sure nothing feels too tight. Now we're just putting this together raw, the way it is, the way it came. We'll probably want to oil these up a little bit inside here. We'll put some oil in there at some point, some oil in there. We're just kind of dry fitting everything right now, get it together, see how it moves without any oil. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised, but realistically, you should put some bearing oil in there. Something to smooth it out. And whenever you're screwing metal into metal, well, one, you should use some Loctite if you're worried about the screws backing out. We usually use blue, but if it feels tight, don't keep going because you don't want to cross thread it and you don't want the screw breaking off inside of your axle housing or something along those lines. So just be aware of what you're doing and these don't take a lot of torque. And if it feels like something's not right, you should back it out, inspect it, and actually, that's hilarious because we are sensing that right now. See, this screw is not even wanting to back out. So just be aware. There could be some kind of machining inside the axle housing, a burr, anything. It could be the screw. And again, you do not want to break off. Man, that is really tight. I'm trying to back it out. And it's not this. It's the actual axle housing. Man, that is crazy. We were just talking about it, and it happens to us. All right, let's pull this screw out. Is there something going on with this screw? Your screw could be bent. There's a lot of things. I mean, they make these little screws by the millions. So it's very easy for them to be just out of spec. Seems better there. Screw seems to go in fine there. Let's let that one stay there. We'll let that screw live there, and we're going to try another one here. Yeah, it seems much better. Odd. I wonder if there was just something going on with that screw, and eventually it worked itself out because it screwed into the steering knuckle just fine. And these are going in just fine. So I don't know, maybe it was just barely cross-threaded at the end of the screw. There was a slight nick or something that caused it to be cross-threaded. I don't know. But these went in better. But like I said, that's exactly why you need to be very aware of what you're doing and don't just force it. Never just force it. Like that could have easily turned into a broken screw inside my axle housing, and it would have basically wasted this axle housing completely. I mean, you can try to get it out, but it is not easy to get a busted screw out of an axle housing, and especially if it broke off clean, right at the top here, clean, and there was nothing to grab a hold of. Oh man, you're in a world of hurt. All right, those are all really tight. And we still have nice, smooth motion here. So that's good. That is very good. Everything, there's no real play. I mean, there's a little bit of, I don't know if you can hear it here. Just barely, but that's to be expected, and way less than I expected. So that is surprisingly, man, and that's just going to get better as you run it. Okay. Impressed so far. We like it. We're going to go ahead and do the fronts now. All right, the front portal axle is, I mean, it's a typical axle, right? The portals are really what's on the outside, but so we got our axle all put together just like normal dog bones. Sounds like our battery is done. Okay, we're all assembled here on our front axle now. Everything seems smooth. And we can go ahead and put on our steering knuckles. And these are our C-cups or output shafts, or stub axles, technically. Ooh, so that is something that we will have to address. Oh, maybe not. Seemed a little tight at first. Here, let's go ahead and look at this. You can see there it's a little... It's only on one side. Oh, let's flip it around. Yeah. So this side right here just has like a little bit of grab there. But I actually don't think that's a big deal because you're going to be in here like this anyway. So we should be fine. Some options are you can Dremel this out so the slit is a little more wide. Now, mind you, that will weaken this and it will cause a little bit more slop in your driveline. But it could give you a little bit more turn radius, so we'll have to see how the turn radius is. Again, we're going to put it together as much as we can without modifying. If there's something required to be modified, we will, but I don't think we need to modify this. And then later on, we can always come back and tweak it, take it back apart, and modify the parts that need modified. You can, like I said, you can widen this slit just a little bit or go a little bit deeper, and that, in theory, will give you more turn radius, but it also puts the integrity and strength at risk. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to go ahead and just put together, and that's interesting that the steering knuckles don't run bearings at all. That is interesting. All right, we're going to go ahead and just put together the knuckle and portal portion, and then we'll put the knuckles onto the axle. So we recommend putting the knuckles onto the axles first, just that way you know which direction the knuckles are supposed to go before you mount your portals on. Otherwise you could end up with your knuckles upside down and a interesting camber on your setup. If you end up like this, right? You may not be able to see it. Here, let's put the axle in so you can see it. If you put your knuckles on the wrong sides, this is what can happen. You end up with crazy, crazy camber. So your wheels will be like that. So don't do that. Make sure they're on the right side, unless that's what you want, I guess. And by right side, I mean correct side. We're going to go ahead and get our parts for that. Make sure you don't lose your little knuckle sleeves. These also appear to be potentially directional. There is a grooved side. It looks like it's kind of tapered on the inside. versus this side is flat. I would recommend the flat side go in, the tapered side stays out. So as you're putting this in, let the tapered side be the top, and that's where your screw will go. Okay. Now because these aren't normal knuckles, you don't need to worry about having your dog bone C-cup installed before you put the knuckle on, so because there's no bearings in there. So it just kind of fits, and then it's held on by the portal case, essentially the gear case there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get the portal case on, and then we'll do the other side. All right, we're going to go ahead and put on our case now. Just be sure you're putting these on the right direction. Remember, this is the top of the axle, so you want to go down. Unless you're trying to lower it, I guess you could flip them around if you're trying to have some really bad clearance. But yeah, probably not ideal. All right, feels good. Don't forget, we still have to put the 2 screws in here, and the same on there. We haven't done the bottom screws on any of the portals yet, so. Alrighty. Feels pretty good. I mean, that's pretty loose. I don't feel any binding at all. It's going to be hard to tell till it's all together, but that seems good. Now we're just going to get all of the bottom screws in, and I don't think you want to watch that. So we'll be back. So I want to mention this now, just in case I don't mention it later, even though I probably will mention it later. With portals and really any kind of axles that you're building, even if they're CVDs, you need to be sure you check your endpoints on your servo. So once you have your servo all set up and everything's all ready to go, before you try to run it hard, make sure your endpoints are properly set up for your steering so that you're not pushing too hard and popping your dog bones out or bending the dog bone T-pins, or your cups, bending your cups, or any of that kind of stuff. Endpoints will save you a lot of headaches. You don't need to get the max steering, mechanical steering. You want to make sure your servo is doing what it's supposed to, and that you're not pushing things beyond their limits. Some of these may look like, oh, they can turn real far, but again, you'll probably pop a dog bone out or something. So again, just kind of pay attention, look at it, run the vehicle, not on the ground, and steer it, and just see how far it looks like you can safely go, and back it off just a little bit so that you're maybe you're not going this much, just that much. Just that little bit of difference might make a world of difference in whether you're breaking dog bones or popping axles out. So just wanted to mention it now. I'll probably mention it again later. Seems pretty loose. That is very good. And the rear is probably the same. It's a little tighter. I can't get it to spin. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, seems good. So we got all of our screws in now. Everything's nice and tidied up. You saw that they spin nice and freely. We got some extra screws here. I believe these are for the links and the shocks potentially, or just extras. These are the ones that actually came with the axles themselves. And we're going to go ahead and throw this on. This is our brass steering link, so we'll throw that on there. And then we're probably just going to throw it on a stock rig, on the stock Deadbolt, and see how things go on a completely stock Deadbolt. That's usually how we like to test stuff. So let's get at it. Stock Deadbolt. We're going to go ahead and pull the axles off of this and the steering links. And we're going to use these guys. We got them all built up. And we've got our steering links on. These are brass as well. So we're going to weigh these, and we're going to weigh the stocks, and we'll see the difference here. Okay, everything's out. We got our 10-gram test. Make sure our scale's accurate. It is. And now let's weigh this stuff. So we've got the stock rear, 14.72. Stock front with knuckles and axles and steering, 19.97. Almost. Nope. Yeah, 19.97. We'll do them both together. This is the big one. 34.7, so almost 35. We'll call it 34.7. 65.2. Wow, 87. 35.7 goes to, how do we get these on here all the way? 35.7 goes to 152.3. 35.7, low center of gravity weight, right? I mean, this is as good as you're going to get. This is the lowest center of gravity, non-rotating mass. These will affect, I guess, I mean, that's going to hurt your servo a little because it's, no, it shouldn't. It's fine, especially if you have a decent servo. But the weight in general, right? But it's not on your wheels. It's not rotating. It's unsprung, the best possible weight. 37 all the way up to 152. 152.3. Oh, it wasn't even 37. 34.7. Wow. That's crazy. That's an extra 117.6 grams. 117.6. Hold on, I'm curious something here. The whole Deadbolt minus the suspension. Oh. Minus the suspension and wheels. You gain a whole Deadbolt chassis. It's 120. So you're 3 grams off. But basically, you gain a whole Deadbolt chassis. Gain a whole Dead. Not just this is more than the Deadbolt chassis. These weigh more, so you gain. That's just hard to, that's crazy. Gain more than, you have a higher difference than the entire Deadbolt chassis. Well, almost higher difference. If you had some nice wheels and tires on there, I mean, you'd blow it away, obviously, or even these wheels and tires. But yeah, that's cool. Enough ranting about that. It's crazy how heavy they are, right? So as long as they perform well, and they're also getting you, it is raising your center of gravity a little bit. Here, let's do this. So you're going to be raising your center of gravity basically 7 millimeters from the center shaft to the center of where the shaft would be. 6.5 millimeters. Yeah, 6.5. So you're basically gaining 6.5 millimeters of clearance, right? So you're going to be able to get over more rocks, but you are raising your center of gravity. But you're actually, I mean, with the amount of weight these have, don't add any weight up here, it does not matter because you have so much low center of gravity weight. This weight is so low. These should make, I mean, yes, you're almost paying as much for the portal axles as you did the Deadbolt, but you're gonna see probably the most drastic improvement you could possibly see as far as being able to stick and stay on rocks. The only concerns, obviously, are going to be the motor, and I think more importantly, the servo may not be able to handle it well, but we'll throw them in there, drive around a bit, and we'll see. So something that we've had issues before with these aftermarket axles, that where you're not using the stock internals, the drive shaft fits pretty easily on the stock. You can see this little half moon or half circle. When you go to these aftermarket ones, the shaft is just a little thicker, a little more thick. I don't know if you can tell, but it is just a tad more beefy. And so you have a tough time. You can get them on, but you can't really get them all the way down. So sometimes you need to either get an X-Acto in here and clean this out just a little bit more, or you can use a Dremel or a file to file this down just a tad, just enough to get this drive shaft to go on. Because like I said, it'll go on. You can see I can get it on there, but I can't get it all the way on. And it does have to do with this being just a little thicker, which I guess some could argue would be a good thing, but because it's beefier. But it does make it hard to get these stock drive shafts on. I've noticed with these aluminum ones, most of them don't even have the shelf on the inside. It's just held on by the screw, so they have no issue going on the aftermarket ones. It's just these stockies. So we went ahead and got that dremel down just a little bit. I've got my drive shaft in my Dremel. I want to show you something I kind of do sometimes to test or break things in. And you got to be careful. You don't want to break anything, but I want to show you. I kind of just hook it up to a Dremel or a drill. If you've got a slower drill, it might be better. I have my Dremel set as low as possible, but I'll go ahead and run it, and we'll just make sure that everything seems to be running smooth. Don't really have any binding, and then I'll try to get our max steering angle out of it. You can see, seems fine. And it's a lot easier to do on the rears. You can just kind of see. Everything's smooth. Feels good. No freewheeling though. You need those mofo 30% overdrives. Even then, I don't know if it'd work very well with the portals, because the extra gearing probably would not freewheel well. All right, let's keep going. So I've seen a lot of people have troubles with the trusses on these aftermarket axles. These seem to have no issue. The truss appears like it's going to go straight on. Yeah, look at that. A lot of times you have to like trim the inside of the truss or the top of the axle housing to get it so that the screw holes will meet up on the axle housing and the truss. But these Hot Team axles, yeah, no issues. They've been perfect. One thing to be aware of when you're tightening down your diff cover, if you over tighten it, it will cause binding on the inside of your differential. So you just want to make sure you're testing along the way. You don't want to over tighten this at all. Over time, it'll kind of break in. It has to do with the O-ring that's in there. And when you put this together, don't put it in too tight. Run it a little bit, check your bolts. You can tighten them down a little bit after you've run for a little. Just make sure they're not backing out and make sure you're not binding up, because again, you can over tighten these and cause it to be very difficult on your motor and driveline. Okay? So we were going to use the stock link screws, the little button heads. And for some reason, they didn't seem like they wanted to. They either are barely too short or something's going on. Maybe I've used them too much, taken a bit of them out of things, I don't know. But we went ahead and just used the screws that came with the axles for the links, and they're staying in. Just wanted to make that note, just in case somebody else is putting these axles on stock. We ended up using the ones that came with it, not the stock screws. All right, we're all installed. We've got power. Let me show you some steering here. Like I mentioned before, you want to make sure you adjust your endpoints. You can see the servo saver once you push it a certain distance. Watch. It starts to, you're not getting actual distance, but the servo's still trying to move. That's stuff you want to be careful of. And you want to make sure you turn down your dual rate. Just so that you don't end up breaking stuff, frying your servo. And on the stock controller for the V1, it's this right here. You can just turn it down just a little. And you can see what it'll do here. So we'll go ahead and max it out one way. And we'll just turn it down a little. Just a little, like that. And now the servo won't stress. See, that's where it was. You can actually sometimes see it. You can barely see it, I'm sure, but up here on the servo, if I turn it down just a little, the servo horn will move, but the steering knuckles do not, right? You want to turn it down at least to where that happens, okay? So that way your servo horn's not maxing out. And if your knuckles turn just a little bit, that's fine. That's kind of the max you want to have it at. And that'll save you from burning up the servo or knocking your dog bones out, okay? And then we'll go ahead and slowly check our throttle. Okay, that seems fine. Another thing I didn't mention when we were installing all this, make sure your drive shafts are in phase. See how the nuts or the bolt is facing up and the bolt is facing up on both sides? You want to make sure that's what's happening. That way this drive shaft is one continuous piece and they're bending on the same rotation essentially. So you can see the drive shaft goes from here, this pin, straight to this pin, and they're not clocked differently. And that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is to make sure your bolts are facing the same direction. And we've got that going on here. You can't see it, but it's down there. You can tell from the drive shaft, from pin to pin, it's the same side. Anyway, we go through that all the time, just for people that haven't seen the other videos. So yeah, seems good. Let's get our wheels and tires on. So I wanted to point this out. We have a lot of extra thread, which is awesome on our axles. Also, go ahead and do this side. You put your axle pin in, your T-pin, roller pin. It's not really a roller pin, but oh my gosh. Put your little pin in and your hex. Mind you, again, we're using the stock stuff. And you'll notice there's a lot of gap between the axle, well, the portal housing and the hex. So the axle is pretty exposed. So I think these are a little extended. They stick out a little further than what your stock axle would stick out from the axle housing itself. Obviously, we have an extension because of the portals, but I'm saying from here to where the hex would fit versus from here to where the hex fits, you have a lot more gap here. So you're getting a little wider stance. The stock wheels and tires do not hit or rub, so that is super good. And like I said, this extra axle shaft is just awesome. I mean, why can't all manufacturers just give us an extra millimeter of axle so that our nylon nuts don't fall off as easy? Also, the nice thing about the hexes not touching the portal housings and having plenty of axle space there is that you can tighten them down all the way. Again, you still don't want to over tighten. Never over tighten, but you can tighten them down pretty good. And your hex nylon nuts, again, don't want to strip them, but they're not coming off. When you add the fact that there's extra length on there, ooh, buddy. All right. Yeah, it's not a wheel nut issue. It's just a little. It's got a little tightness in there, but it's not binding. You can see it's pretty loose. So, all right. Well, here's how she sits. What's going on with my? So just a little wider than normal, which is nice. Here, let's do this. Yeah, that's all stock with the exception of the axles and the steering links. I like it. It's way heavier. I bet this thing's going to perform so good. All right, so we have two issues. One is a real issue, one is not. It looks like our axle shafts, so the dog bones, are not staying tucked into the gear. Now, I don't know what that's about. Usually the front C-cups and dog bones have a small sort of grommet or O-ring that sits in there, and these did not come with that. So maybe we need to transfer them from the originals, or instead of taking it all apart, we'll just add some because we have them. But the original dog bones and C-cups should have a little O-ring in there. And I wonder if that's why the axle shaft is able to slide out of the brass gear, because that's not good. So we'll look into that. Another thing I want to point out, though, is when you install portals, forward is reverse and reverse is forward. Everything is backwards. So if you have a stock controller, you can change your channel 1, but you cannot change your throttle. So you can't reverse your throttle, which means you have to change the pins in the motor or resolder the motor. Now, obviously, the easiest thing to do is to change the pins in the motor. So you basically pop this out. Let's go ahead and turn this off. You can use an X-Acto or whatever, and you can lift these little white tabs. Don't break them, just enough. And while you're doing that, you kind of want to hold this like so and put some pressure on it, right? So hold it with your middle finger and your thumb, have your thumb kind of on the pin or on the plug, and then you can kind of push with your index finger and your thumb and push this way, and then with this middle finger pull back. That way you're kind of pulling on the plug and pulling back on the wires, and then you can lift these little white tabs. Okay, so we get the black one out, and we'll get the red one out. Now remember, flipping your motor wires makes your motor spin the other way. Flipping your battery wires fries your ESC. So do not flip your battery wires ever, unless you really know what you're doing, and you're doing it for a very specific reason. Man, this one's tight. And actually our blade's kind of not the best. We lost the tip of the blade. There we go. All right, so we'll go ahead and put the red one on this side now. The black one on this side. If they slide right back out, you might have bent these too far. Or the metal, there's a little metal like thorn on the top side. It may have gotten bent down. You just have to pop it back up. All right, put these back in. Turn it on. And now our forward is forward. Okay, so let's get back to this axle issue. We'll dig in there, add some O-rings, see if we can figure out why there's so much play in there that the axles are able to slide out of the brass gear. So these are the little O-rings I'm talking about. Actually, that one looks a little, that one's plastic. It's not a rubber O-ring. You want to make sure you're using a rubber O-ring. Ideally one that's not completely flattened or distorted or whatever. Got a whole little bag of them. They come with the screw kits. We can actually post that in the links below. We'll try to provide the screw kit. If I forgot, tell me in the comments, where's the screw kit link? And I'll add it. So you should be able to take one of these little O-rings and just put it down in the C-cup here. And it might kind of feel like it's fitting sort of awkward. You can just kind of tuck it down in there. You just want to try to get it as flat as possible. It's not going to be perfect, but get it close. I don't know if you can see it down in there, but it's down in there, and that should help prevent the dog bone from popping out. All right, let's do the other side. We'll come back to that. All right, we're all installed again. Turn her on. Seems good. All right. I approve. Simple fix. We think. We'll find out when we run it. I definitely think that your stock servo is going to have a heck of a time trying to keep up with this. So just keep that in mind. Once there's weight on there, it's kind of having a rough one because there's so much weight, and this is a lot of weight for the stock servo. I kind of wouldn't expect it to last. So that's not a fault of the portals or the brass or any of this stuff. It's just the stock servo is not designed to handle that much weight. I almost worry about running this on the rocks with the stock servo because it might just end up frying the servo, and we don't have to fry the servo, so that would kind of suck because we like to keep this rig stock, and for testing purposes, frying the servo is not ideal. Maybe we'll do just a little quick run, but we're not going to push it. Now, if we were running one of these guys in here, and maybe we should swap it out just for the test, that would be good. Probably work a lot better, but really what you want is something like this. This is the NSDRC RS 100 Micro, and it's pretty much the best you're going to get out there for the price. I mean, even regardless of the price, it's probably the best out there. The Reefs 99 is also very, very, very good. It's very comparable, and there's a few others that are very close, but this guy's just a beast, and they're not too crazy in the price. For what they are, they're very reasonable. So if you're looking for a really good servo, this is the servo you want. So something I wanted to point out, if you're having a hard time getting your knuckles on, like you feel like you're trying to put the knuckle on and it just won't go because the dog bone's hitting on your cup, one thing you can do is rotate your cup so that the dog bone is vertical. It's going up and down this way versus coming out the side, and that'll help you get your steering knuckle and the C cup over the dog bone. When the dog bone is facing forward to backward, it's a lot harder to get your steering knuckle on. So just a little pro tip. So we're using the back side of a ceramic tile. It has a light texture on it and some crosshatch pattern, so it helps us get a little bit of grip, but it is hard, heavy, and gives us a very accurate angle. It's very flat, and like I said, it's more importantly, it gives us a little bit of that grout type texture that is good for these. So this is going to be our baseline for the Deadbolt stock. This is our maximum climb angle. We're going to start right now with a 49 or 50 degree. Looks like it's 50. We're going to go ahead and add 1 degree. So we're basically 50 to 51 degrees, and you will see a pretty dramatic difference. It will roll over a lot. It does not like to go up. That 1 degree makes a difference. So it looks like our stock Deadbolt is at 50 degrees to 49 degrees for the maximum. Pretty crazy that 1 degree makes that big of a difference. So it looks like 49 to 51 is really the max. And again, everything's going to depend on just where your center of gravity is. Even on the stock, if you're using a different battery or your battery placement is moving forward and backwards, things of that nature are going to make a difference. But I can safely say that the average of 50 degrees is going to be the max on the Deadbolt, completely stock. And here we have the Deadbolt stock, unmodified, and we're going to find its maximum degree for side hilling. Right now we're at 33 degrees, 32 degrees, and we'll go ahead and raise it until it flips. Okay, and we'll go ahead and do it again. So we're looking at about 35 degrees. We'll just do a couple more quick ones here, just to help verify. We'll even move where the truck is. So it really is looking like about 37 degrees, 35 to 37 is kind of the maximum. You know, a lot of it's going to have to do with how your battery is sitting and just your center of gravity, but that's about max. Here we have the Deadbolt with the Hot Team portal axles. They're all brass. And the stock was like 35 to 37 on the side hilling. We're already at 38, 39. Let's see how far we can go. So it looks about like 46. So the stock max was about 49 to 50, maybe 51. So we're going to go ahead and start at 51, 50, 51. So we were three-wheeling there. This side was definitely lifting. One thing to remember, while that was basically the max of the stock as well, the completely stock, this is a much higher center of gravity because we're raised on the portal, so we have a lot more ground clearance. So normally you would expect it to have a much less incline ability. But because they are heavy, it does hold it down. Now we're pretty limited by our stock tires here, so that's going to hurt us a lot. But you can see it can handle that much higher incline as far as rolling backward is concerned. Let's see if we can get 52. There's a 52, 53. See, the problem is the tires, not the weight of the axles or the center of gravity, it's the tires. So really, it looks like it's about the same as the stock, maybe a degree more, but again, you are with much higher clearance. So you're gonna be able to get over much bigger rocks, much sharper angles. I mean, this is a huge benefit, having that extra clearance. And it's gonna cost you your incline, your max incline. But you also saw, because there's a little bit more width now on the side hilling, you're gonna get a just much better incline and even more stability. So it's definitely worth it. The portals are a huge benefit. So one thing to note with this, these rocks are pretty tall. They have some sharp angles in them, and you used to hit the axles quite a bit and high center quite a bit. The stock truck could not make it up that line without getting caught on that rock it just went over, or scraping axles real bad. So these clearly are giving you a lot more clearance, and seems to be doing much better. So this rock here is really a task for any stock truck. Pretty much no stock truck can make it over that. They high center at that point almost every single time. So the clearance is, like I said, it's a huge benefit. Definitely helps. I think the weakness in this truck right now is going to be the servo and the tires and the motor. And once you upgrade the motor and the servo and the tires with these portal axles, you will have a beast. I think it'll be no joke. And they're definitely worth checking out. Really, it's just because of the weight, the amount of weight that's there, and the clearance combined it's a huge benefit. So definitely worth looking at. So I don't know if you can see this, but it always seems to be an issue with aftermarket axles, or just when you're pushing a lot of torque or weight, the dog bone pin starts to slide out. So we usually have to end up like gluing those or using Loctite or something to keep the axle pin from sliding out. It's actually hitting on the knuckles. And this is not an issue just with these. I've seen it with, it seems like all of them. It keeps kind of getting caught. If you're turning just right, it'll snag. So you got to be careful. See it right there? You can see it right there. And it's hitting on the knuckle. So we need to pull that dog bone out and adjust it and Loctite it or something, because it's going to hit right there on the inside of the knuckle. Right there. You can't get the camera to focus, but you can see if I give it a little throttle. basically just cut. Okay. Again, this seems to happen with a whole bunch of different axles or dog bones. It's not just isolated to this brand. So you can't really judge the brand on that. That's why we have CVDs. So I hope you guys learned everything you would want to know about these hot racing brass portal axles. We actually think they're pretty fantastic. And for the price, you can't go wrong. There are some other brands out there that use the same design, or maybe these designs are those designs. I don't know. I don't know if they're made in the same factory or what, but you can check out those as well. But these guys definitely are quality. So you just have to wait because they do come from China, so shipping does take some time. But I think they're well worth the wait, and no pun intended, because they're a lot of extra weight. And yeah, if you have any questions, make sure you post down in the comments below any questions you might have. And yeah, be sure to like and subscribe, and we're going to do some more products, hopefully from Hot Team. And yeah, we're excited. We're excited. So make sure you hit the bell. That way you know when the newest videos go up. And yeah, till then, get out there and build your rigs. Get some upgrades.